welcome to another episode of It's All Connected. It is said a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Hamilton, and I want you to join us today on another episode of It's All Connected, the show where we help you to make that connection between your spiritual health, your physical health, and your emotional health. We'll be right back after this short break.
Good evening, everyone. Please be reminded that your greatest wealth is your health. And this month, June, we're emphasizing men's health. And we want our men to stand up and take that responsibility for your health, because the average man pays less attention to his health than the average woman. Compared to women, men are more likely to drink alcohol, use tobacco, make risky choices, not see a doctor for regular checkups, and also not to maintain health. It is important, men, that you take responsibility of your health. Your health is your wealth, and you have a responsibility to embrace a healthy lifestyle, to prevent diseases before they come upon you. Many of the major health risks that men face can be prevented with a healthy lifestyle. And we know that men are assailed by the diseases that can affect anyone: heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, depression. And many of these can be prevented. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And even during this pandemic, many of our men are depressed, are experiencing uncertainty. But let us remember that there's hope, because we have a Creator. We have a Savior who loves us, and He has promised that He will give us abundant life. So, men, we're asking you to connect with Him, and also remember the emotional side of your health and well-being. Try to do your best to eliminate anxiety, depression, even anger. That's a negative emotion. And we're seeing right now in our country, Jamaica, that many of the crimes that we're seeing, the heinous crimes, killing of women and children, are done by men. And we have to take a stand and encourage our men to control the negative emotions and trust the Creator, because He has promised never to leave us nor forsake us. He's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. So trust Him and ask Him to empower you. He has promised to give you self-control. He has promised to enable you to be a gentleman. When you come to Him, if you're just a man, you'll become a gentleman, because He says, "Come unto me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, because I'm meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." So come to Jesus, men, and He will take care of your emotional needs. And ladies, remember that men have emotional needs also. Men need your support. Men need to be complimented. You have to let them know that they're needed and that they are doing a good job. So take time to utter vital words of inspiration and motivation. And indeed, as you do that, they will experience better health and well-being, and they will be happier and work harder, and we'll have a better society, better communities, and better homes. God bless you. Have a good evening.
Five. Welcome back to today's episode of It's All Connected. And guess what? We'll be talking about emotional health for Men's Awareness Month of June. And you must be saying, why did Dr. Hamilton choose emotional health in the month of June where we're looking at men's health? Well, it's very important, because we have come to realize over the years, and I know you will agree with me, that men do not take very good care of themselves. When we talk about self-care, as you can see on the screen, Men tend to be very low on the scale when it talks about self-care, and self-care is important. You see a few dimensions: spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. So for today, we're going to be focusing on emotional health. So what is emotional health? Well, when you're feeling stressed, your heart beats faster, your blood pressure rises, and your muscles get tense. A little bit of stress is actually good for you. That's called eustress. It can focus your attention, give you a sudden burst of strength to get out of a dangerous situation, motivate you to succeed, and even stimulate your creativity. After whatever caused the stress response has passed, your heart rate should return to normal and you can get on with life. However, when stress doesn't go away, it starts eating away at your immune system and increase your risk of developing a number of physical and mental conditions, which include some, as you can see on the screen: constant fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, trouble falling asleep or even staying asleep, back and neck pain, headaches and backaches, sexual problems, short-term memory loss, and loss of appetite. And this is just a few. Now, it's important for men to really understand how important it is to express themselves, to show emotions, because we know that we are cultured differently. And we want you to know that it's okay to talk. And we're not just talking everyday talk, right? So a shout out to all men going through a lot right now with no one to turn to because this world wrongly taught you that you need to mask your emotions. We're talking to you tonight. It's okay to talk. And we're not talking about with friends, but okay to express yourself. Why is this important? The fact is there. The facts are there, right? Men are 3 times more likely to kill themselves than to ask for help or to say that they need help, right? And it's going even further. You know, Pastor Hossein talked to us a little bit about men's health awareness and doing checks. And the truth is, most men are sometimes, you say, in denial or ashamed to admit that they have a specific health concern, right? The level of health consciousness amongst men is poor, but improving slowly, because I know I have some men who are slowly becoming aware and they're improving, right? And guess what? The classic, what we always say, men do not see doctors. That is still true today. Now, men's health, suicide, and depression, as you can see. Depression in men is undiagnosed, contributing to the fact that men are 4 times likely to commit suicide. Among ages 15 to 19, boys were 3.1 times as likely as girls to commit suicide. Can you imagine? Among ages 20 to 24, males are 4.6 times as likely to commit suicide as females, right? And the suicide rate for persons aged 65 and above, right, is about 31.5 times more likely than women, right? So we know that men do experience depression. Have you ever be able to look at your partner, your brother, your father, anyone in your family and be able to tell how they feel by facial expressions at time? Now, if you look at this picture, it gives you some example of how it can be for some men. Not all men, of course, but the happy face. Can you tell the difference between the happy face, the sad face, the surprised face, the angry face, the afraid face, and the desire face? Sometimes we can tell a few, but a lot of times you can't distinguish the difference between them. So, if this is so and you're one of those men or you have one of those men in your life and you're not able to distinguish, I want you to encourage them to watch this program because we're going to go into a lively discussion with a few young men today. And the next thing I want to ask you to do, how stressed are you? Can you rate your stress level for me tonight? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you rate your stress level? Is it high? Is it low? Put it in the chat if you're able to. Very important for men to be able to determine how stressed you are. And finally, a penny for your thoughts. I've said a lot. You must be thinking about some stuff. A penny for your thoughts. I know you can't put it in the chat, but even if you need prayer, I want you to put that in the chat. Now, as you know, we have a case for you, and we're going to transition to that case today. We'll be right back.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. If you think you've been exposed to COVID-19, stay home, self-isolate immediately, and call 888-1-LOVE. That's 888-663-5683. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Today's case is a little bit different, and yes, I'm standing in that slot where you're used to seeing a male figure. But I wanted to tell you a love story today, and I wanted to tell it in a little different way. So the case I'm going to tell you about is about a young man who came to me, and he was in some sort of a love triangle, if you would want to see it that way. Now, I know that a lot of you eventually is going to pick up where in the Bible I'm actually talking, and you're going to post that in the chat. So this young man presented to me, and, he had a lot of digestive issues. He had, experiencing headache, all of that. And I asked him what was happening, and he said, I fell in love with someone but married someone else, and it really just rocked me. So I asked him to tell me more. And this is what he said. He went traveling off into a distant land. And while traveling, he decided to look for his mom's relative. As he traveled, he came to a particular area and he saw persons tending to their flocks and so forth. And while he was there, he started to ask them questions about his uncle. They told him he was in the right area, going the right direction. And while he was there, they were actually waiting and talking together when he saw a young lady approaching. As she got closer, he looked at her, and for some reason, his heart fluttered. When she came near, she wanted water, and he decided to assist her. He was so impressed by her that he assisted her to get water for her flock. And at the end of it, he was so taken up with her. You can say it was love at first sight, that he kissed her. Quite unusual, right? Not knowing who she was. He inquired and realized that she was also the daughter of his uncle. They went home, met his uncle, they spoke. And as a result, he was so impressed he wanted to work for his uncle. And his uncle agreed that he would allow him to work with him because he needed some help. But then in exchange, he would allow him to marry his daughter, whom he just fell head over heels in love with at first sight. Well, whilst he worked with his uncle, and the time came where he should now have his daughter given to his nephew in marriage, they arranged everything, the marriage went on. And at the end of it, the night to consummate the marriage, he realized that, but in the morning, it wasn't that daughter that he liked. In fact, it was her sister. He was so upset, he went to his uncle and asked, "Why did you trick me?" Well, the uncle explained she was the elder one, and it was unfair for her to be left and not being married, and the younger one being married first. He was very upset. As a result, again, emotional trauma. He was disappointed. Headaches, everything ensued. He had to now work again for another period of time. At the end of that, yes, he did marry the woman that he loved. But now he had two women. And whilst he had the one that he loved and her sister, the relationship didn't go too well with both of them, because one felt that she wasn't loved and she knew. But for some reason, God allowed her to bear children, whilst the one whom he loved could not for a while. Well, I'm sure he said he was happy for his sons that he got in that marriage, but his heart was yearning for his first love. And as a result, we're going to talk about this story more in depth as we look at emotional health and men. So join us for the discussion.
An important message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. How to wash your hands. Firstly, wet your hands. Then apply some soap. Rub your hands palm to palm. Lather the backs of your hands. Scrub between your fingers. Rub the backs of fingers on the opposing palms. Then clean your thumbs. Make sure to wash your fingernails and fingertips. Rinse your hands. Then dry with a single-use towel. Use this towel to turn off the faucet. And now your hands are clean. When to wash your hands? After coughing or sneezing, after taking public transportation, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare and eat food, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, after handling animals or animal waste. An important message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Well, I guess you were surprised to see me telling that story. So you do know that I have my HIPAA statement, and I was the doctor, so I already had my patient sign that waiver for me to share that story. But for some of you who are not aware, it's found in 2 Timothy 3, verse 16, which says, all scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness. So you see why I keep looking. I don't want to make any mistakes, right? Very important. These stories are dear to us, and we want to help you to make some connection. So if you're just joining us, welcome. If you're on cable, call someone, your brother, your father, a male, someone, share this episode with them because it's very important. We're talking about emotional health and men. And I have two handsome, young, and a little bit older men joining me today. And they're going to give you some bright smiles. So welcome to It's All Connected. We have Pastor Dudley Hossein, who is our Jamaica Union Men's Ministries Director, correct? And we have with us Brother Noel Jump, who I'm going to ask to tell us a little bit about himself, because he wears many hats. So, Brother Jump, could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, I'm a transformational speaker, an entrepreneur. To put Noel in a nutshell, basically, I believe in being transformational, loving, and assertive, and that makes me purpose-filled, where I believe each and every individual can become better each day once you take a conscious approach to not only the spiritual side of life, but also looking at yourself as a product to grow, to become better, and ultimately to achieve the highest calling, which is to go to heaven. So that encapsulates Noel Jump, purpose-filled, transformational, loving, and assertive. That's Noel.
Okay, so that's a whole lot. I know that you're listening because he's going to be telling us a little bit more. He's going to be sharing along with Pastor Hossein in our discussion today as we look at emotional health. So I chose a kind of love triangle story from the Bible, and I have some questions here for you, Brother Jump and Pastor Hossein. So the Bible records marriages between family. I don't know which one of you would want to go first, but marriages between family members in the Bible. And in this case with Jacob, was that permissible because of the culture back then versus our societal norms today? Brother Jump, I don't know if you want to take the first.
Well, I mean, the honest truth is this. Hollywood cannot write the kind of storylines that the Bible have in it.
Yes.
And I like to highlight, before we even get deep into the conversation, that as Christians, we need to understand that the Bible, through God's grace and his eyes, he has placed stories in the Bible that evokes the passion that Hollywood can't.
Yes.
So you look at this story, for example. At first, Pastor, when I read it, when I was a child and heard it, I was like, a family member, what kind of business is this? But as I looked into Patriots and Prophets and the Bible commentary, I realized it was really a term given as a second cousin or first cousin. So they weren't necessarily blood like I would say brother and sister kind of setup. And it lent a different ear to me at the time, because I now look at it from the perspective of saying, all right, fine. So we are indeed in a love triangle, but not necessarily one of hardcore family. And Pastor can help me to pick up on that. But it's really about a man's desire to have a wife, care for that wife, and at the same time he was beguiled. But so he did the same thing earlier on in the Bible.
Yes.
So,
Pastor Hossein, oh, you're finished?
No, Pastor can take it from here because it's really intriguing.
Yes.
You see, at the end of it all, God's plan and purposes must be accomplished.
Yes.
And God wants his people to be a peculiar people, a people that have that commitment to him, that keep the sacredness of biblical tradition. So God was in all of this.
Yes.
Because God always wants his people to be connected to others who have similar values
Okay.
and who are basically connected to him. So God was in all of this.
Okay.
And we know that all things work together for good.
Okay.
And great is the mystery of godliness. We can't explain everything in details, why certain things happen. But God allows it for a purpose.
Okay.
Because God is large and God is in charge.
You know,
Okay.
Pastor said a very important point here, because as I look at it, for example, look at this. Every day, I go to church, and when I was a child, and I hear the pastor, like Pastor said a while ago, all things work together for good who loves the Lord.
Yes.
However, that walk many times is tough. You look at Jacob in this story. He couldn't necessarily provide, as he came over with no money. But however, Laban saw it in him and said, all right, let me see you working, because I can't give you my daughter without you having that resource. However, as he did it, he found the character of Jacob. And I'm just piggybacking on what Pastor said a while ago. And the first thing I mentioned about the Bible is relevant today as it was back then. Because here it's showing me in this story alone right there, in your walk in TV land. It's saying you may feel as if, the job is not right. It may feel as if society norms aren't there for me, and I'm not being a successful person. But we define success too many times by just wealth of money. Because here you see Jacob becoming wealthy because of his father-in-law, quote unquote, helping him to work the sheep, work in the farms, and that kind of stuff. And over time, he was able to matriculate into getting his wife, which we know he got her first one. But in any event, as Pastor said, it does work together for good. So those who are watching today, I want you to see the Bible as a romance story between you and the Holy Spirit and Jesus, where you're looking at yourself in the perspective of him growing you through life lessons like what happened to Jacob with his father-in-law. Because there it is that in that said moment, God showed his hand.
So what I'm hearing from both of you, in a nutshell, basically, that even though we're looking at the relationship, that at whatever point in time, it was God's will. God allowed it to happen for a reason. And even though we don't practice that now, where we actually marry our cousins, second or third cousins, unless otherwise we don't know, we don't necessarily really encourage that these days, nevertheless. I do know in our society, though, based on the fact that we're looking at men's health and men's emotional health, that we do have persons who are products of families that they don't necessarily know their fathers.
Yes.
So men, Caribbean men do have a tendency of having more than one children with different females. They don't necessarily know their entire family members. And you do have that, sometimes they marry their cousins. So we're just not necessarily saying that that's correct to date, but we do understand that certain things happen for a reason from the biblical time.
Yes.
So my next question then, take us straight into this emotional health topic and men. So it indicated that when Jacob saw Rachel, and I know you have a way with words and that's why you're here. So I want you to help me to understand this. And I see Pastor Hussein look like him going to start blush. I don't know if he experienced this, but you can tell me. So when Jacob saw Rachel, right, he kissed her and wept aloud. I don't understand that. He didn't say that they have a conversation or anything. He just looked at her and he kissed her and he wept aloud. Now, as a male figure, can you relate to that expression? And what would you have made? I mean, why would he have reacted in this manner? Take it from you want to go past the older man on the platform? Okay, go ahead.
You see, the songwriter said, tears are our language.
Okay.
Yes.
God understands. And we have a similar experience too. After that, when Esau and Jacob met, they greeted each other. And they kissed each other. You know, they expressed emotions. Back then it was okay. Not now, of course.
It's not okay now to express emotions?
No, in terms of, like in our homophobic society.
Yeah, I know, but remember we're
Jamaica,
staying with the
kiss.
female.
I'm talking about kiss.
Yes.
Kiss, all right? So the female. So I'm just saying that it's okay because he was expressing himself. And he expressed it with tears.
Okay.
That's a way of showing his satisfaction and joy. Joy filled his heart that tears flowed. We can't really express everything because we were not there. But based on what we have seen in the story, Jacob loved her.
He
had
just
that-
saw her and he just fell in
yes,
love.
love at
First sight.
first sight, maybe with insight, I don't know.
Okay.
But God was leading him, and he saw her, and no doubt God spoke to him, and he had that confirmation. So when he kissed her, that emotion that he had storing up,
Okay.
he was saving all that love for her. And as he expressed it, tears came.
Okay.
Tears of joy, not sorrow, of course.
Okay. So, Brother John, what's your take on it?
Well, there's a saying that goes, the heart, like the stomach, needs varied diets. Okay? So I am sure in that moment that love at first sight sort of jumped on him. But you have to also understand that as Jacob came into the story, he had just done wrong to his brother. So he and of himself, he was ostracized and he felt lonely. There is an aspect of human beings and our connection with each other that there is an element sometimes of you just see somebody and your spirit take them.
Yes, yes.
So I would look at it from the mere fact that here is someone who is walking and now he has reached and was looking for Laban. He has found him. He also, his land, he also saw Rachel catering for the sheep. So he also saw her industrious side. And I'm sure as a man, for me, when you look at a female, you look at that industrious, that flavor, that intellectual property, and it tends to evoke a passion inside of you. So maybe he saw this, and as a result, he's like, whoa, where I'm from, I've never seen a woman do these kind of things, and I am totally enamored by her. So I am sure in that case, there was love at first sight, and there are many couples around the world that can tell you the first time they met, they knew that they were going to become husband and wife or whatever, fiancé, because what? It's just there. So, the Lord's, God has his hand in the entirety of the Bible. It's woven in it.
Yes.
Yeah, but love is more than a feeling.
Yes.
Yes.
Somebody says love is a feeling that you feel that you have never felt before. But it is more than a feeling.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a principle.
It's a principle. It's a commitment.
Yes, it is.
So can we say that Jacob had that commitment to her at that time?
Well, I think based on what even Brother John said, going back to his experience, and we can see it in a lot of relationships that are formed. As he had mentioned, he had just gone through something in terms of, he's no longer able to go back home, what happened between himself and his brother. So he had been lonely for some time. Now he saw someone, as I said, there was some attraction
something
that appealed to him. Because I don't know, when you saw your wife for the first time, did you have a feeling that was different than any other woman that you met before? I don't know, because I've heard persons talk about it, like the first time that they saw her, they just knew that she was the one. So for whatever it is, loneliness, everything coupled up into that emotion itself, when he saw her, I don't know if that was the trigger, but for some reason, obviously, his heart leaped. So it started with a feeling, but obviously it ended with a commitment because he worked for 7 years and, well, more than that eventually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pastor mentioned something very profound a while ago when he said the word commitment. Now, notice in the story, you didn't find Rachel where she pushed him off.
Right.
When he made that advance. He didn't. She didn't. So therefore, there was some sort of understanding or some sort of commonality happening there.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
there are three types of yeses that are out there. You have the counterfeit yes, you have the commitment yes, and you have the I am just confirming yes. Okay, so in this case, as Pastor said, the commitment yes, where is it that you're looking to take the next leap of faith committed to this person? And I will implore men, we're talking to men here today.
Yes.
As you step into life and you continue in your own life, try to figure out which yes are you getting, which of the yeses are you getting, because at the end of the day, that in turn dictates how you treat said individual, whether male or female, any interaction that you have, because a commitment is a serious thing.
Yes.
And a counterfeit yes is one that leads you on and you're like, whoa, I thought I had it, but I didn't. And an affirmation yes, okay, I'm just saying yes. So you have to know which is it.
Yes. As you said, all of that, I pretty much want to now bring it to what we notice or what we see happening in our society. And even though we are looking at things from a biblical perspective, we're in a world where persons have different faiths. Some of them don't believe in God. And when it comes down to relationships and going into relationships, especially into the church, there is sometimes a lot of emotional trauma and hurt. Because as young persons, you get to know different persons, you date, and then there are several stages. And I think most often what happens is that persons tend to get a little bit more involved emotionally ahead of time instead of taking the time to know each other. And even though we looked at the story and how things kind of progress real quickly, I think you'd agree that in our Jamaican society, we tend to see a lot more of the physical interaction occurring first and people using that as a way of saying, well, this is how men express themselves. But in truth and in fact, from a biblical approach, it was still a respectful greeting.
Yes.
I would say it was still a respectful greeting. But traditionally in our society, we see that happening a little bit different. And this is now what persons will say. It's acceptable to understand, this is how a man shows how he loves you because he wants to touch you physically. There's some form of pleasure seeking. So that's the way. And this is what we want to actually look into as it comes to emotional health and being able to express themselves. Because I remember when I was much younger, my grandfather, we weren't from a family where, he hugged us a lot, but we knew that he loved us, right? So men experience or show or display their love in different ways, but there are some natural things that they should do, if you will agree with me, like hugging. And I'm talking about your family, your children, stuff like that. Those are natural things, but it's not necessarily very common. Actually, verbally saying, I love you is also important, right? So we're not going to just meet someone like Jacob and Rachel and go up and kiss them and say, I fall in love with you. But it's expressed a bit differently, which is more acceptable today and also safe, and also looking at it from a biblical perspective. We want to send the right message. I don't know if you wanted to say something, Pastor Hussein, before I move to my next question.
Yes, you see, many times we behave the way we do because of how we were brought up.
Yes.
And the norms in the society, you see. So we are told growing up that men should be tough.
Yes.
Men should, bear burdens and pains, and we nurture men not to be expressive.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons why we're not seeing men expressing themselves and admitting that they have challenges relationally is because of how they were nurtured.
Yes.
So we have a lot to do with that as a community, as a country, as a society.
Mm-hmm.
We have to let men know that it's okay for them to cry. Look at Jacob.
Yes.
He wept.
Yes. Yes.
He wept.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay for men to express themselves. Tears.
Mm-hmm.
It's a normal part of our emotional expressions.
Yes.
So we have to begin to nurture men that they should exhibit those qualities that ladies normally exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
Courtesy.
Yes.
Care.
Yes.
Empathy, sympathy.
Yes. Yes.
But when we say men should be tough,
Doesn't
they
mean
try to
just
hold back
emotionally.
because of the expectations we have of them.
Yes. Yes.
So we have to begin to rewrite some of the things that we have been practicing. When I mean rewrite, go back and change that expectation and how we see men.
Yes.
That it's okay for men to
Express themselves.
express themselves and show meekness.
Okay.
And meekness is not weakness.
Yeah.
Moses
Right,
was the
right.
meekest man.
Yeah.
God was with him.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to go back a little bit to the story where Jacob was tricked to take Leah. And you both mentioned something about family traits and how men are cultured in families, and to see what is really happening in our society now. So if we go back to the story and look at the trick and the exchange, we see here that similar things had happened before as Jacob and his brother and his mother. So is this can be also a family trait where trickery
See, the
runs in?
deceiver became the deceived.
Yes,
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 yes.
yes.
So what goes around comes around.
Yes.
You look
Yes.
at that. So they were trying to help out God,
Yes.
etc. So that is there because the mother's brother he was with, and he was also a deceiver.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So this is
So
quite interesting.
yeah, so brings
yeah.
me back to looking at the fact that you said that men need to learn how to express themselves, and I think they're around their mothers most of the time. Most
Yes.
of them are grown by their mothers, and even so they see that. But what we need them to learn, what you are both talking about, that has to be taught by the father figures. Am I correct?
To an extent.
Because they need to
yes.
see someone of themselves in that same light, expressing themselves for them to learn it, and not from a female.
Yeah, but the thing is, because if we're piggybacking on what Pastor said, which is very much true, where he's saying, we have to get to the place where we look at the culture of how we came up.
Right.
If my father came up that way, where we don't communicate as men, and I'm looking at him as the example, I'm going to follow suit. I'm going to follow suit. But there's a way to really and truly bridge that gap. And
Yes.
it's called, for me, I would call it being mindful. Now, to be mindful is basically, if I am approaching Pastor, for example, and Pastor, he and I have issues. I have a problem with him. I am to look at Pastor from the perspective of when I was dealing with my own problem. For example, what if it was gambling? All right? Because we know many men today gamble and the
Gamble,
children
yes.
are watching the cash pot and all that is real.
Right.
For me to get over that, it took a lot as a man, okay? And when I'm looking at Pastor and his limitations in his character or whatever it is, I must now look at him through the eyes of what I went through to address me
Okay.
through the grace of God. So, for example, it took me long in that case to become a better man.
Yes.
And for some it might be financial security, for some it might be, boy, blowing off the top of your head, because we all sit here on a scrap paper for our own mistakes, okay? But when you can see the other individual as someone who has been through what I have gone through, it took me a long time to get it, maybe a year or 2 or 3. Then when I look at you, I have compassion.
Yes.
And in having
yes.
compassion is about expressing yourself. Compassion is about you having a shoulder to lean on,
Yes.
where that person is there for you. And the stat you spoke about in the introduction, where you said men are killing themselves, are more likely to hang themselves, and
Yes.
so on and so forth. Studies also show that when we are happy, we're 31% more productive.
Yes.
So therefore, if I am being compassionate to Pastor and his walk, and I'm being compassionate to you and your walk, I am seeing life through your eyes.
Yes.
And we see the world as we are.
Yes.
So if I'm a miserable person, I generally think everybody's the same thing. But if I am to look at it from a mindful perspective, what happens is I am now beginning to understand your story, and I'm now beginning to open my perspective, and my
yes.
imagination is not bridging the gap. What is bridging the gap is reality, of empathy, of that compassion. So therefore, I grow as a man, because we fail forward, man. Just admit it. We progress forward because we're failing forward. We're learning from the same. So if we were to use that kind of ideology in a nutshell, it will help to change the culture of what we
Yes.
have out there. So that young man who is watching, or that female who is watching, it's not necessarily about only watching your mommy and daddy.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Like what Pastor said, we have to really go at the root cause of it all and say, listen, it starts here. Your strongest muscle isn't this.
Yes.
It's your
yes.
brain.
Brain.
It's your brain. And that's where we have to change
Willpower.
that mindset in order to get to that mindfulness of each other. To grow.
Yes. So then this brings me to a situation that we have here, and we hear a lot about. And it is actually in the story, but in a different way. Can a man love 2 women at the same time? And I'm not talking your mother and your wife, or your mother and your sister. I'm talking about 2 women. Can a man actually love
Pastor,
2 women at the same time? You say you're giving that to Pastor Jose?
Well, very interesting question. And I have one
Because
wife.
I've met men that have said that, this person's remind me of my mom, this one, there are certain things about her, and they say that they love, but I can't understand that. So
Yes.
is that possible you're both men?
When
I want
in
a
the
response.
Christian context and the
Yes.
context of marriage, you can't really love 2 women at the same time.
Yes.
You may admire and like certain things about
Yes.
one, etc. But in terms of commitment,
Yeah.
Yes.
because when you look at God's original plan,
Yeah.
God created Adam and Eve, male and female, one man to one
One woman.
woman. Isn't that so?
Yes.
And that's God's ideal for
Yes.
one man to be committed to one woman in partnership, love for life. So having 2, and when you look at that story as it evolves, you realize that there were 4. In one house, there
Yeah.
were 4 baby mothers.
Yes. 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 Yes.
2 wives,
Yes.
And
And
two-
helpmates.
2 other
Yes.
handmaids.
Yes.
So can you imagine that level of dysfunction?
But I think
Yeah.
the story was clear that who he loved, though.
Yes, yes, he loved. But
And there was
if you
tension
notice,
there was tension there.
there was a competition
Competition.
Yes.
as to who can have the most babies. And when Rachel saw that nothing was happening for her,
Her.
we would say, not now, go on.
Yeah, yeah.
She
yeah.
brought her maid and said,
Take
Yes.
it.
a
Take her.
similar thing happened
Yes.
with Abraham.
Yes.
You see the connection there?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
sin is deceptive and dangerous and deadly. So we have to understand that context. But to answer the question,
Yes,
I don't
want to
believe,
bring it
because
back to today.
I've not been in that situation. I have one wife, and I'm committed to her, and she has all my love.
So I want to add something else, but I want to hear from Brother Jump.
Well, to be honest, in looking at it from a story's perspective, and when we started the discussion, we spoke about us bringing it down to the level of where we live.
Yes.
The simple truth of the matter is there are many of us as Adventists who grew up as non-Adventists, even those who are not Adventists, us Christian-minded, are in society where a similar situation is right there in our neighborhood, where we're seeing daddy having baby mother here, baby mother there, and as a result, you're saying, how do I get his affection?
Yes.
So, being that we're talking about men and our depressed state at times, I would honestly put it this way. The Bible is still real and relevant today.
Yes.
Here we are seeing the Jacob story play out even now in society, where Jamaica has the highest level of what? Of a jacket in the world. So therefore it even pushed itself to another dimension where you have a father who has created a bond with said child, and then down the road you hear say, boy, I know yours, my Jenna. You understand? And these are things that are happening, and that's why we have to make persons know through the written, because I know Pastor also deals with the publishing, that the Bible is still relevant. And that's why this discussion is really prudent today, because we have to make persons know that, listen, the Bible isn't an archaic book that we just fling out the window, like you throw the baby out with the bath water. No, it's real. And here the Bible showed us an angle where he really genuinely was committed to Rachel, because that's the eye that he caught, the apple of his eye from the beginning. However, Leah knew of the deception beforehand. And it goes back to Jacob's own story.
Right.
And that's why I said unfair game played twice. And being when I said to be mindful a while ago, he now saw himself to say, that's what I did to my father and my brother. Oh my. And he had to live through that. Because even though he had baby mothers and so on and so forth, deep down inside his love was for Rachel. But Rachel could not produce a child. And as a result, for his entirety of his life, you're finding where he would have really wanted it to be otherwise.
Yes.
But it wasn't.
Yes.
Because earlier on, he played a deadly game with his own father and his brother. And his mother used him too to deceive his father.
So, still keeping it to present day and looking at present day, because we're talking to persons who are in the church. They're Adventists. They're married. They may be from other faith groups, and they're married. And I remembered recently seeing a program headlined, and this is a church program targeting married couples about the wandering eye of your mate. And I'm just going to be open in the sense of explaining, because I have friends who are males. Majority of my friends are male, and good friends, and they will tell me that, look, some are Christians, some are not. And for whatever reason, they will have someone that they see and they say, boy, I really, really like her. And they really have a strong attraction. And you can see it naturally when they're around them, like they're besides themselves. And I think I've learned to sense these things early. Just growing up, a little bit of background, growing up, my stepfather, I was the person who basically discovered that he had an extramarital affair. And I was probably about 10 years old. I just looked at how he looked at the person who he was talking to and realized I'm seeing the same expression that he would show with my mom. And something as a child told me that something wasn't right. That didn't end too well. But as an adult growing now and having male friends, I can see where that's a true struggle for them, and they're being open and honest. They're married. They see someone that they like. But when I go into the question and I go in and I ask more questions, this is what I find out. And you kind of alluded to it in the story. So it's not necessarily intentional, but a lot of the marriages are formed from different reasons. So going back to the story, Leah, it was by trickery. She was given to him in marriage. Some persons I understand in relationships, they end up marrying someone else, but that wasn't the person that they really wanted to marry based on whatever situation. And at that time, they were probably young, they didn't know how to handle the situation. So basically, they chose someone who they think, this is a good person, and I'm going to get married because this is a good person. I'm making a wise choice. But they really didn't love them or fall in love with them. They were making a decision from a place where they're saying that, this is a good person for me. She's a good woman. right? She's industrious, all of that. But they didn't fall in love because the person who they really liked was the person who probably dressed a certain way, who based on where they were and what their expectations from them, they know would not necessarily be the right person and they haven't been converted or whatever it is. But there are some areas where they were lacking. Now, going into that marriage, they did make the commitment, but guess what? They didn't expect that they'll probably see someone years down the road or meet back that person and still have that desire to be with them, because there's just a natural attraction, right? There's this natural attraction. And then they struggle with that. And then they play around in the sense that, well, they may not get into a relationship with them, but they don't realize that how you look at the person whenever they're around, that how you talk to them, you can tell that there is a little bit more in terms of that friendship. And it is real, because a lot of marriages struggle with that, because this is what happened. As I said, they're not in love with the wife. They love them because they admire them for who they are. They did marry them and so forth. But for whatever reason, their heart is there whenever they see that particular person. It is drawn out after them because that's where the attraction is. And some of them eventually fall. And they will say, no, they can't really choose. That is how they explain it, right? They can't really choose. And I struggle with that, because if you made a decision consciously to marry someone, even though, right? Even though you know that, you know, there are some things that you like, you decide to, I'm going to, you know, settle with what I have. I can accept this, she's a good person, all of that. Then how is it that later on you have this struggle? What happens? There is something unfulfilled, there's a need that's there. Does it affect a person's ability in the marriage to want to, you know, talk to the wife to say, okay, can we do this? And I've had marriages too where persons will say, well, they know this is a good person to marry and not the other. But when they go into the marriage, they'll say, well, I want you to be like this. And the person will try their best to please them and do the things. But eventually, the marriage still doesn't work.
Yes,
and they'll try to meet the demands what the person wants, but it just doesn't work. And these are real cases. And I know those who are watching will understand, right? Because men don't necessarily talk. And this is what we want to say. We want men to talk, express yourself, because we don't know what's going on in your head. Right? We don't know what's going on in your head. And the facial expression sometimes, like I'm looking at both of you now, because you know I'm a doctor, right? I study everything, body language, everything. And I'm looking at you both right now, and your facial expression has been quite constant through everything that I've just said. So I can't even pick up something to say, okay, So I don't know, but it is real. It's in the church, and it does happen, and women see it, and sometimes you'll have wives who will go around and they say, no, I know that something is wrong. And we see a lot of marriages that I don't know, you pastor, you probably get reports that, you know, I feel my husband is cheating. How do you know? I haven't caught him, but I just know, right? How do you address stuff like that? Because the husband doesn't talk. She knows that he's probably not totally happy with her, and she sees that emotional difference when he's around other person, how he gets excited. How do you deal with that? Because men don't talk, and that's why I need you here today for us to understand a little bit more.
So you brought us here today to talk.
Yes, to talk.
Dissect us.
Yes,
scientists kind of thing.
exactly.
Put us down the middle and
Yes, a little
So
dissection.
we have to talk, and interesting discussion as it relates to marriage. And to set the record straight, Jacob had no choice. You see, his case is different. He wanted Rachel, and he got Leah.
Right, that's why I said.
Yeah, so he had no choice. Definitely. In Jamaica, we see a different scenario. We see folks moving around, having a number of women. And they have children with them because of the expectation. In their small groups, men boast how many baby mothers they have. So they feel that they have a chip on the shoulder, that they have some start on their shoulder if they have a lot of children. I've heard that. I've listened to folks, you know, boasting of their male power. Yeah, that because they have a number of children. So we have a part to play as a church to change that culture, to educate folks on the Bible and let folks realize that this is not counted as success.
Right.
In God's
But remember,
eyes.
we're talking about in the church, so we don't want to go too far from it. But
Yes.
what is actually happening in the church?
In the church, yes. But of course, you know, the church impacts the community.
society, and it's a society.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the community, the entire society.
Yes.
But of course, we'll get back to that. So to get to the point there is that you mentioned that some folks, they get married and they see other folks that they love, and they loved them before. That's why
Or they choose to marry someone who it wasn't necessarily their first love, because a lot of persons get into marriage.
It happens.
Yes.
That's why we try as a church, and get back to the discussion, church, to do premarital counseling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we emphasize that you need 6 months. It's not saying that it is guaranteed that, look,
Yes.
you will not have challenges. But at least doing common entrance years ago, we oftentimes say if you fail to prepare, you're preparing
To
to
fail.
fail. So there are many factors. So folks, they need to have that level of premarital counseling, that they can know if they're making the right decision, which is crucial. But of course, sometimes they do all of that and they feel that connectiveness and connection, so to speak, that they love each other, but we end up with challenges. So the male aspect must be dealt with, because male and female are different creatures in every aspects of their well-being. So we have to deal with that and educate the church that we're different. Different how we express ourselves. You know, females speak more.
But how do we get males, Pastor? Because remember, I'm saying, this is someone who, for example, and I know women who would say, you know what, he married me because I was the right choice, right? But in terms of how he treats me and what I know he likes, I don't necessarily represent that, and they can see it. So he made the right choice to marry that person. That was the right choice. But who he loves or what he sees, what he wants, is something else.
And remember too, parents have a part to play.
Yeah, but we're talking about men in the church,
man.
adult men.
No, I'm just saying that you're saying that that person thought it was the right thing to do to marry that person, all right? But deep down, he had a desire for somebody else.
Yes.
But at the time, and many times too, parents help to shape our thinking that this person has this and that, and it would be good, and the person thinks about it, rationalize it, and end up moving forward without a conviction. That's why in the church context, we have to be convicted too, that we're doing the right thing.
Okay.
That God is a part of this
Okay, so
decision.
let me hear from
All right.
Brother Jump.
They say imagination is the situation between perception and understanding. Okay? Now, as we're looking at males in this context that you're speaking of, his perspective and the understanding, there's a gap. Now, if he has a partner with his wife in this situation that you're speaking to, the French they have a saying that they say, they call an orgasm for a male little death. Why am I talking to this? When we look at the grand scheme of things, when we were on the playground as boys, Pastor, and we played cricket or football, we'll always say that we want the best footballer want to win the game. We're always competing. We always want the shiniest mango in the tree. We always want the biggest plum that's coming out. So when we get it, it's like, for example, I always see dogs running down and barking after a bicycle or barking after a car. So that's a question now. When the car stops, what does the dog do with the car?
He stops.
He can't drive the car. He can't ride the bicycle, but he has run it down. In essence, as men, as boys, we were small, we're always competing to win. And when we win, we say, okay, so what's the next mountain to climb?
Oh.
This is why I said earlier that imagination is the situation between perspective and understanding. And I spoke about an orgasm being a little death. Because what it is you have reached it and, okay, I'm good to go now. I've got the feeling. Now we're dealing with the female. In life, that's how we deal with it. We don't deal male to male, we deal female to male relationships. Now follow me clearly now. I would want to describe a female as being like the sea, where you go and look at it this morning, it's calm like a pond. A few minutes later, it's a little rough. An hour later, it might be raging. 20 minutes after that hour, it might be calm again. Women live their life in pockets of love. They love their job, they love their children, they love their gym, they love the food, they love their family, their husband, and as a result, they're pockets of love. Now, pockets of love sometimes get a little rough, and that's why the sea sometimes get
Rough.
Now, we as men, because we're so targeted, little death, we're also trying to fill that gap of imagination. We're also on the playground trying to get the biggest apple or the biggest mango or try to win the game. We are heading tunnel vision in a ship, and we're going to a certain bank. What does a ship sail on? C. I would propose to you that women are far more intact with their emotional self than males. But because we are so focused, driven from children to fight for what we want, when you reach it now, oh my, so is that the dog will run down the bicycle? But we can't ride it. The dog cannot ride the bicycle, no matter how him bark and run behind it. So I'm making, so the point I'm actually speaking to is the fact that when you understand how the males think about target and goals and win, as a female, to understand them is to also help them to set their own goals and target within the confines of the relationship. And as a male, you also help your wife or your spouse to help you to be the sea where she's helping to go to the specific bank at the time in helping her through her pockets of love. We get to the point where in society we have this thing where we want to be macho and be independent. And as a result, there's a big standoff. The man must become and remain macho. And the woman must remain fully independent because it's a man's world out there. And so I am saying to us in the church and our viewers today, let us bridge the gap between perspective and understanding, not with an imagination of looking all over the place, but with an imagination to help to let your partner understand you.
Yes.
What is your target? What is your little death that you're trying to? We're thinking bigger than just sex here. What is your target that you're trying to get to? Is it your financial? Sometimes the women, they're not helping us to talk about the financial things, to talk about career development, personal development past. And as a result, the man is targeted, but he's targeted to the wrong things. So it's about two of you, really. A woman is strongly emotionally, and she's very strong emotionally. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. But the fact of the matter is, we have to bridge the gap with our imagination of what the relationship can be. How can we grow? How can we grow together to give you your focus, laser beam? Because a wife, really and truly, a woman needs to see her man not only as him being physically there, but also he's going after his purpose.
Yes.
Men, find your purpose.
Yes.
Because if your female or your family members, your friends, aren't aligned to your purpose or see your purpose as being big and you're a goal-getter after it, ultimately you lose the base. We have to culture ourselves that way.
Okay. So at the end of the story that I left out is this. There's a certain young man. He married the woman of which he knew that he should marry. They were both Christians. They went into the church. They got married. Because he was in the world before, there are some things that he was used to, right? But at the same time, he knew those women were not the women that he wants to settle down with. So he did find all the qualities that he wanted in this wife, and he married her. But there are some things that he enjoyed with women who were not of the church. Hence, he tried to ensure that, he knew what he wanted, so he presented those things to her, and she tried her best to meet his demands. Now, at the end of it, he still wasn't satisfied, no matter how she tried. You gave the analogy of the dog barking at the car when the car stops, then what does the dog do? Men, we call them men are hunters, so to speak. We like to use that term, like men are hunters. So the thing is, what he didn't understand, and I see it even today, the relationship has ended. He has moved on, and he has moved on to several different relationships, even remarried a few times. And now he's going back to the first wife. He's not going to her literally, because then that's as ended, and he knew he messed up to that extent. But now he's going back and realized that it's not the fact that she couldn't meet his needs. He himself could not be satisfied, because he really, even though he thought he knew what he wanted, he hasn't discovered his purpose, or did not discover his purpose at that time. But there are a lot of things that he wanted, he aspired for. But in terms of understanding what was his true purpose, he's now realizing that, and as such, he's able now to control the relationships that he goes into, and he will look at some of these women that he would be naturally attracted to, and it has no effect, because he now is able to look beyond that and appreciate much more, which is why it's important for men to express themselves. Because had he been able to talk to his wife and not saying, hey, I'm comparing you to someone else, trying to fill the same need within you, instead of discovering his purpose and them coming together and align themselves together in terms of their emotional intimacy, interaction with each other, he would realize that what he's searching for is something that needs to be developed in the relationship with both of them as they grow together and as they work together. So now he's by himself. quite unsatisfied, but now looking back and realize it wasn't the relationships or the person, but it was his own inability to express himself and to see the need, what he really wants, and the things that he thought would have given him that happiness and accomplishment. As long as he didn't have that family, that support that he wanted, absolutely made no difference now. So he's still empty. He's still void of a lot of things, which he started out with the base in the beginning. So we are far spent with time, and I have 2 questions left. And one is, what are some of the struggles, if you can just list it, what are some of the struggles men have in expressing their emotions specifically to their spouse? What are some of the struggles, do you think? You're both married, I'm correct. So what are some of the struggles, do you think? Not asking for your personal self, but what are some of the struggles do you think men have in expressing themselves emotionally to their spouse?
See, it depends on a number of factors too. If a man is connected with his wife in every step of the way, the two shall become one. It will be only natural for you to share intimate things because you have been growing together. Start from the bottom, I would say, rise higher, and you catch a fire as it relates to your relationship. So if that is not in place, if you're not bonded, if you don't trust each other, the trust factor is crucial. So many times when couples don't express, or the male in particular, the men, don't express is because of a lack of trust.
Okay. All
and
right.
There could be also a problem with how the person, that man, has been nurtured.
Nurtured. Okay.
You know, in terms of how to communicate, what to express.
Okay.
And I've heard it said, woman nothing know everything. A woman should not know everything. So that is said in certain circles. So he grew up with that mindset, as Elder Job mentioned, that it starts from the mind.
Okay.
And it based on your thinking. So if your thinking is right and you see the man sees that, look, this is my help meet, my partner. I compliment her, she compliments me.
Okay.
So we should express and we should dialogue, interact.
Okay.
That's
right.
important.
So, Brother John.
I'll piggyback off what Pastor said. And I'll also go back to what I said earlier on, mentioned earlier on about being mindful. I think we need to get to the place where we understand that at the foot of the cross, we all are sinners.
Yes.
And at the foot of the cross, God also shows us through various stories in the Bible, like the one we discussed today, Jacob and Rachel, where we can see ourselves and get to the point where we understand another person's walk and their perspective. And as a male, I would suggest to our males watching and our females who are watching also for edification to get to the point where you're willing to speak about your shortcomings.
Yes.
You're also willing to know that oftentimes we sell this thing where we talk about giving advice as if they are there and we are here.
Yes.
We all have our struggles. I'm sure Pastor prays from time to time and say, I made a mistake, Father, please forgive me. Whether it is raising temper or whatever it is. Accept that you're on a journey.
Yes.
And you're on a journey called life. It's your own. You're going dead one day by yourself. Show up for your life. And that means you're stepping into your power knowing your own mistakes and learning from the same. A failure only becomes permanent when you allow it to. And fear only serves itself in your mind. Okay? So if yesterday you made a mistake in your whatever friendship, relationship, whatever ship you're sailing in, accept that you can learn from the same and be assiduous about it. And when you fall, accept also that God is there for you because no one is perfect. The man who is perfect is above, and we're trying to get to him. So males, I would say to you to continue to step into your power by failing forward. Continue to be mindful of another person and their walk and their journey and try to ingratiate yourself into that and open your perspective. We see life as we are, but unless you open up your mind to seeing it bigger and bigger and bigger, I once heard an old man vehemently exclaim, don't use your mind to remember. Use it to imagine. You can do more than you think. So I am talking about us growing together, both male and females in the church, growing together by learning from our failures and moving forward.
Okay, so my last question, and it's directly to both of you. Could you tell me 2 ways in which you show love to the person that you love, whether it be your wife or children?
Or your auntie, uncle, anybody?
Yeah, 2 ways in which you show, but it has to be a female.
Okay.
2 ways in which you show your love, or express your love, or indicate your love towards them.
First? Okay. Well, for example, my daughter, for example, Alena, call her Bam Bam. She's one that is very outspoken. And a mind like that, you can't. I remember we were growing up, we used to tell us, children was seen and not heard. Okay? That's not the today's child that we have, okay? They are playing with their tablets, they're on smart, matter of fact, they're on Zoom doing classes these days. When we were their age at 10 and 12, it was a non-existent thing. I show love to her by allowing her to express herself.
Okay.
I show love to her, for example, the other day I saw her writing in a book, and when I went to have a look what she was doing, she's like, Daddy, I'm drawing an animal. I said, what kind of animal is this? The animal had 9 feet and 2 tails. And I'm like, whoa, that's your imagination going like there. Let us play this game together. And I got her brother together and we played the game. And the way how she spoke about the character of the animal within the game, we went walking for a Sabbath evening nature walk. And I saw a bird of hawk trying to catch a sparrow. And the bird would go very high, higher than where the other bird appeared. And it zoom off and the bird fly up. And I say, Alena, what are you learning there? She's like, one is running away flying for his life, while the other is flying to preserve his life. And I said, what does that remind you of? She said, Daddy, it reminds me of God, the Holy Spirit, where the devil is trying ever so hard to come at me, but I'm that little sparrow. He helps me through the turbulence of the wind to escape. What am I saying this? Unless you allow the child to express him or herself in a way where they are comfortable with saying, Daddy, this is my problem, this is me.
Yes.
They can't grow. We as adults are here to nurture. And if you're nurturing a child and showing them love, it's about allowing them to speak. Children don't speak in monotones, they speak in vibrant expressions, and listen to them, because oftentimes it is their ideas that are going to change the world. I'm sure Isaac Newton was once a child.
Right.
I am sure Elon Musk was once a child. And we
Yes.
can go down the litany of them all. Winston Churchill, all of them. I mean, he had a famous quote. He said, we all are worms, but I'm a glowworm. It is to accept that our children, through the sinful world that we live in, can be butterflies. They can be lilies in the pond, growing, because what? As adults, we have learned. And we're helping them to germinate into their best self.
So in other words, for you, it's supporting and allowing them to
Supporting.
have that freedom
Yes.
of expression.
Yes.
Okay, Pastor Hussein, what is a way
Yes.
that you show your love or indicate
Well,
your love?
ladies like to hear the words, I love you.
Yeah.
And
Say that again and look in the camera, Pastor.
I love you. I hope my wife listening. I
Yes.
love you.
Yes.
I love you. I
Amen.
love you.
Wow.
So I'm learning that because ladies like to hear that. I remember I met a gentleman and his wife was a couple. The wife was very concerned that her husband was not expressing himself. So I spoke to him and I asked him, why is it he's not expressing himself to his wife? He said, look, Pastor, I'm a man of my word. I told her when we got married that I loved her. That was 20 years ago.
Uh-oh.
And because I'm a man of my word, what I meant 20 years ago, it's still valid today.
Uh-oh.
But not understanding that a lady's love reservoir needs to be filled every day. So I'm learning that. Sometimes I forget, but I'm learning that. And hugs are very important.
Yes.
We need at least 8 to 10 per day to keep us emotionally healthy.
Yes.
So hugs are very important. So
Yes.
you can hug your wife, even though we're
You
living
should,
in the
not
pandemic.
can, you should.
You should. Thank you. I'm just mentioning that because
Yeah, the
some folks
pandemic.
will say because of the pandemic, social distancing. But not for your wife, not for your
No,
spouse.
I hope not.
Of course, I'm just mentioning that. So it's important for us as males to express ourselves, to hug. I try to hug my daughter. She's a teenager.
Yes.
She'll be 20 this year, but you know, she was growing up and she wants less of that. But of course, I try to hug her.
And your sons as well, because remember we
Sons,
talked
of
about
course.
what men need to learn. Okay.
Excellent. So saying the words and showing it.
Thank you
Both,
so
not just words, but deeds.
Yes.
Both of them,
Yes.
they go together.
Yes.
And men must learn that art.
Yes. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion today. I hope that you also feel blessed by what we have shared so far. And just to add a few more things for our males and our females who are listening, it's important for men to exercise just for their emotional health alone, if not for anything else, because stress can lead to a lot of negativity in the minds that affects their behavior towards us. Counseling is important, so they should know that, they need to go to counseling if it is needed, if there's childhood trauma or anything like that. And not because of societal norms and what it teaches, we need to move away from that. Men need to express themselves. And we shouldn't just assume that, well, I know he loves me because he provides. But it comes in different ways. We call them love languages. They come in different ways. So I hope that we have encouraged you to share this episode with a male, any family member, your spouse, anyone else for them to watch. I hope that you post your comments in the chat. Now, we want to give you a prescription in a different way. And our brother Noel Jump is going to do something a little bit different today for the men. So I want you to listen keenly to what he's about to do, and we'll be right back after this break and the medical disclaimer which follows.
A slow, malignant thought has my mind lost in a world of mess. Where are our men? Standing for the powerless, giving voice to the voiceless. Am I to accept that good men are preoccupied with being young and restless? For a moment, I bid you take flight away up in the skies with ambition so bright. Majestic is an eagle in flight. Its maneuvers of superiority over the atmosphere that I reckon an important life lesson has been lost, especially to our men. The wind, the eagle doesn't see where it comes or goes, yet it relies on its ability of trained agility to adapt to the unseen, converting a certain crash landing into a ballet of mastery. Tossed and torn, you will often find yourself on the rocky shores of life. However, a real man masters the art of honesty and sagacity while taking flight against life's unseen, unplanned for monstrosities. The ghosts of yesteryear should never haunt you, but make you stronger. Admitting you don't know is your first step in finding out how to know. To say sorry through sincere apology doesn't make you less of a man. In fact, it makes you a hero against your ego. Our females aren't asking us to climb to the mountaintops alone. However, assure her she stands with you and equal. Her shoulder warm with affirmation. Voice stern to task, not to mention that female intuition. It will be needed more often than you think, especially when your energy levels are thin and when the Almighty has blessed you with offspring. It's not cool to be a glorified sperm donor. Children live what you live. That's the example that makes a good character staple. My friend, what isn't dead, don't throw it away. For Rumi said it best yesterday, I was clever, I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I am changing myself. Friends, it's the microscope before the telescope.
The following medications are meant to treat the diagnosis intended upon dispensing. Please note, many side effects of medications may not be reported. Side effects can occur when commencing, decreasing or increasing dosages, or ending a drug or medication regimen. Side effects may also lead to non-compliance with prescribed treatment. The following side effects are noted: love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you experience any of the reactions, please consult your physician immediately for medication adjustments.
I hope that you were inspired by Brother Jump's presentation to the men. If you're a female and you're watching this, I hope that you will share it with a male counterpart for them also to be inspired. Those were powerful words that he shared, and I know that you must be thinking quite deeply about what he has said to encourage men. So, remember, we want you to be encouraged as you go forward. And right now, we are going to be praying for you because there are many of you who probably have emotional hurts and things that you have experienced over a period of time through relationships or parents where they were not able to express themselves to you in the right way. It came across wrong, but now you're an adult and you do understand a little bit more. So as you pour your prayer requests in the chat, we're going to ask Brother Noel Jump to pray for us. So continue to put those prayer requests in the chat. After this song, Brother Jump is going to pray for us as we go towards closing this program.
Was broken, mine was mended. He became sin, now I am clean. That cross he carried bore my burden. The nails that held him set me free. His life for mine, his life for mine. How could it ever be that he would die? God's son would die to save a wretch like me. What love divine, he gave his life for mine. His scars of suffering brought me healing. He spilled his blood to fill my soul. Oh, his crown of thorns made me royalty. His sorrow gave me joy untold. His life for mine, his life for mine. Son would die to save a wretch like me. What love divine, he gave his life for mine. He was despised and rejected, stripped of his garments and oppressed. I'm loved and accepted, and I wear his robe of righteousness. His life for mine, his life for mine. How could it ever be that he would die? God's son would die to save a wretch like me. What love divine, he gave his life
Our Father who art in heaven, we thank you so much for another day. Father, we thank you for an opportunity we have to just breathe in air. Father, we don't even know when our lives here on earth will end, but we know who holds the future. As we sit here this evening in your awesome grace and power, I ask you to empower a man who's watching this episode today. Empower a woman, empower a boy, a child, to know that you are there for them. The Bible is as real then as it is today. We discussed Jacob, and we saw the life of Jacob, how he went from being not just the giver of bad news and a scheme that somehow got his brother on his wrong side, but he also the same game played twice. Father, ever so often, if we as human beings don't take the time to really and truly get to know that you are there, that still small voice saying, you can go forward, you can grow, you can step, you can continue to be the man or the woman I have envisioned you to be. Father, tonight, I ask that you may come by the bedside of that man, that woman, that young person, that older person who is in the hospital bed or even at home watching. Father, draw nigh to them. Let them know that your sweet Holy Spirit can help them to know that the Spirit of God is still with them. As we close this program, I pray your unction to function on each individual, and I ask that we may continue to open our perspectives to understand that we as human beings, we are dynamic, and as such, we have to learn to have a dynamic mind in order to have a church that will run as a smooth, well-oiled engine. Thank you again, and I pray for each and every member of the church. I pray for each and every leader of the church. And Father, thank you once again for this program. Amen.
Amen. There is power in prayer. I hope that you are truly blessed and you know that we have prayed for you. So if you're watching on cable, know that you are covered in this prayer. Now, we want to thank our co-host, Brother Noel Jump. He has a YouTube page.
Yes,
that I know that the thoughts that he shared with you, that presentation that you saw, I know that you want to see more of it. So, Brother Jump, could you tell us how your handle for that page? And we're going to put it up on the screen.
Well,
for sure.
my handles are at Noel Jump, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I'm a transformational speaker, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program. A few years ago, I had a friend that died. He was one of the strongest persons that I knew, was well built and was dropped down dead one day. And I said, boy, before my life ends, I'm going to try my best to make an impact. And as I thought about it, it came to me to be transformational, loving, and assertive. Because if it's one talent that God blessed me with when I was born, it's to be positive.
Yes.
So I'll always be just giving of myself in that way, because I know someone out there might be going through many things.
Yes.
Visit my Instagram, visit my Facebook, visit my YouTube channel, and you see it at Noel Jump. And all those videos are there for you to step into your power, to understand that God is there for you, because each video comes with a text at the end of it. So you can share it with your friends, and it can be that witnessing tool to help someone to grow, because I believe in you, and I believe that God will continue to work his marvelous ways in your life.
Yes. Thank you so much for being with us today as my co-host, and also Pastor Dudley Hosin. Thank you so much for representing men's ministry and the married men in our church with happy marriages. And I love when you told your wife that you loved her, because you know there's going to be over 5,000 persons who view this between Facebook, YouTube, and all over NCU TV. So as you preach across the conference, we'll definitely remember that. So thank you so much for joining us. We want to thank the hard-working production team here at the East Jamaica Conference. It would not be possible without you. So until the next episode, continue to walk with God, trust God, and remember to share, like, and subscribe as we say goodbye from It's All Connected.
There are so many ways to say I thank you. Oh yes, for all you have done for me. And even when I didn't want can I say just how much I really thank you? Oh yes, you keep all your promises true, and you help me, Lord, in many different ways. I will praise you for all of my days, and I call you Lord. You're Lord of all the universe, Lord. You're Lord of all the land and sea, Lord. I love you, and I'll always trust in you, Lord. Oh, I call you Lord. You're Lord of all the universe. You are Lord. Yes, you're Lord of all the land and sea, Lord. I love you, Lord, and I'll always trust in you, Lord. Oh, yeah, you're Lord of all the universe. You are Lord. Yes, you're Lord of all the land and sea, Lord. Lord, I love you, I love you, I love you. Yes, I'll put my trust. Oh, I'm gonna trust. Yes, I'll always trust in you, Lord. Oh, yeah. Say I'm gonna put my trust in the Lord. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna trust in the Lord.
Celebrate the dawning of the Sabbath with us tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. sharp as we bring to you Youth Mission Live. Brandon Daly and the dynamic team awaits you. It's 7:30 p.m. right here on the EJC Virtual Church.